Hi there. This is going to be a bit of an opinion piece because I started writing down a bunch of ideas about composition. And when all was said and done, I came to a conclusion that I guess a lot of people already have come to, and that is that composition is such a subjective area that trying to expound upon a lot of rules and things like that is sometimes counterproductive. Now, don't get me wrong. I believe that there are certain undeniable facts about what makes a good-looking image. But I think if you slavishly hold to things like the rule of thirds and other of these dogmas out there about composition, I think what you'll find is that your images, well, let's just say they'll have a certain sameness to them. They will probably not be the most exciting images. So, after saying that, and after doing a number of videos where I spoke about things such as rule of thirds, I talked about dynamic symmetry, I talked about things like leading lines, I think it's time to kind of draw back and reload. The fact is this. Some people who have much more to say than I do about composition, who are much more knowledgeable about the details of these things than I am, they will talk about things such as the Gestalt philosophy, or Gestalt psychology for that matter, behind images. They will take images and they will deconstruct them to show things such as repetitive lines, use of diagonals, and so on and so on. I think it all comes down to what Henri Cartier-Bresson said when asked about his images, what the secret sauce was, if you like. And his response was simple. It was geometry. And I think that's what it comes down to. And geometry implies not complexity, but a form of simplicity. When we think about geometric shapes, we have certain basic shapes that we will deal with all the time. We have the circle, or the ellipse, close related, of course. We have the square or the rectangle, again, related. And we have the triangle in many forms, from the very proper regular figures, such as the square, the perfect circle, the equilateral, equiangular triangle. But we also have triangular shapes that appear quite often. When we look at a rectangle, we look for things such as maybe an embedded square. The rebated square is I guess you can say it's a compositional tool where you take a rectangular frame and you sort of divide a section of it off as a square. And your composition sort of varies from within that square to without. So that we have something of a I'm not going to say a contrast here, but at least some differentiating factor. So sometimes we have shapes within shapes. The heavy vignette on some images implies a circle in a square image, or an ellipse in a rectangular image. Again, I'm not a big fan of very heavy vignetting, but a little bit of vignetting around the edges of many images will, of course, draw the person more into the image. It prevents the eyes from escaping past the edges as they darken. So, I'm rambling now. So to get back to the point I was trying to make, with regards to composition, try for some sort of visual impact. Don't make your image too busy. Try to avoid too much in the image. If you are going for something like a face, a simple portrait, a headshot, then keep it fairly tight. When framing an image, keep two things in mind. One, yes, you can crop after the fact. So if you must, compose to allow for that crop. And on the flip side of that same coin, try as much as possible to fill the frame so that you don't lose any of those pixels through excessive cropping. Nowadays, when we get these 40 plus megapixel cameras, you have a great deal of flexibility with regards to cropping. However, you are still throwing away pixels. The lower the resolution of your camera, the more critical it is to frame carefully so that you will lose as few of those pixels as possible. For instance, I started out, my first DSLR was 6 megapixels. And of course, being based on the 35 millimeter standard 3:2 ratio, the result was an image that did not print in a larger format than a 4:6 print. Because if you went to a larger format, you had to crop. And the idea then was to make sure that in the short side, you have everything included. Because you are going to have to lop off some of the long side. So if you're shooting in landscape orientation, you know you're going to lose these edges. So make sure you've cropped carefully in camera. Make sure that you are framed carefully so that you don't lose any of this. You're going to just lose what you have to over here. If you're doing portrait format, it becomes even more vital because you must give a little space above and below or to one or the other so that when you lop that off, you're not losing any of your image. I've made the mistake on a couple of occasions of not doing that, of framing too closely and actually having to rebuild a background in order to be able to print something as an 8x10 in its entirety. So, keep that in mind. Okay? Yes, you can crop. Yes, if you have a super high megapixel camera, you've got more flexibility. But, if at all possible, try to frame in camera careful enough so you don't have to crop very much. Alright, keep it simple. Try to make sure that there is nothing particularly distracted in your image. If you are stuck with an image that has something that is a very strong color in the background that you cannot avoid, then that's probably a good time to look carefully at the idea of doing black and white. I mean, if I had a large red object right here, bright red object right there, then that bright red object is going to draw attention. And it's not attention that I necessarily want people to be drawn to. So how could I get rid of it? Black and white. As soon as I flick it to black and white, then of course that just blends into the background. It doesn't become a visual distraction anymore. Okay, as I said at the beginning, this is not a long video. Basically, it is a revisit if you want to go back and look at some of my videos regarding composition. By all means do so. This is sort of a jumping off point for a couple more discussions on this topic as we move forward. And if you have enjoyed it, please, by all means, give me a like so I'll know. If you like my videos and you want to see more of them, of course, subscribe to the channel. And if you think anybody might get something useful from this or any of my other videos, feel free to share. Well, I guess that's it for now. Bye for now.